My name is Mark Holmes. I head up the global supply chain market strategy for the company. We're based from a corporate headquarters, we're based in Boston, so I'm from Boston. And also I work very closely with Ming Zhou. So Ming Zhou heads up supply chain product strategy for the company. So we work very closely with each other. Obviously, we want to make sure that what we have as a product, we are in the right markets and we're meeting your needs, and then vice versa, because as we learn and we're working with you and learning from you, we can also adjust the product itself, which I think is a competitive advantage for us. So just a little bit on my background also before I get into this, is I've been in myself in supply chain and logistics for well over 25 years. Probably shouldn't focus on well over 25 years, but it's I've been in a consulting mode. I've been working for as a domain expert. That's what we use, myself and Ming, quite a bit because of our domain expertise in supply chain. We love coming out and doing whiteboard sessions, learning what your solutions, what your business outcomes that you want to optimize. And you're going to see in the presentation that that's what we like to focus on, is through our technology. Yes is very important, but it's how can we help optimize your business outcomes? And we can only do that by really understanding what your solutions and business challenges are. So Stephanie, I'm going to refer to her presentation a few times, but I just wanted to show you from a market perspective. So IDC every year puts out a market glance. And I wanted to show, so they put us in, there's a new category last year. So you'll see supply chain orchestration, which makes up what they call multi-enterprise commerce network, decision support, and supply chain analytics, and then supply chain risk management. They placed us in what would be considered for them control tower, and then also for decision support. I think that is the right place for us, because you'll see in the presentation that we're all about, like Luciano had mentioned before, it's around data management. The supply chain product is like a data management on steroids, because we're helping with different supply chain outcomes that can then be fed back into an application. So when we talk about applications, we're talking about everything that's under IBP. So IBP, Integrated Business Planning. So many of you here, I'm not going to go into all the details because you're using them. We go into so many companies that they might have up to 30 different enterprise systems that they're working with, especially as they have more and more acquisitions. So maybe they started with SAP, and then they went to Oracle, then they went to Infor, and then they typically are using, they might have almost, maybe 70% of all these that they're working with. So when you truly want to get to supply chain orchestration, it's a mess. It is the amount of data that is not on time, it's not real, it's not trusted. How can you really have a good planning system? And I'm going to go in and show you some examples around how we can help with that. So the InterSystems difference from a supply chain perspective is, I'm not going to read every word here, but really consider us as an AI decision intelligence platform. So that is the first part of what I'm going to talk about. The second is that we then unify disparate data throughout the supply chain. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail of what I mean by unifying disparate data. And the key aspect is that we do this as one platform. As you can see, I'm using my arms, so you never would have heard me. So, but it's one platform, and that's another key differentiator. And I'm going to go into some examples of why that's important to be able to do all of this under one platform. I like showing this slide because any company typically will go through, I built that slide out based on really learning from all of the different companies and analyst firms that I've worked with, is that level one is really just trying to figure out what is your strategy, where do you want to go? And then ultimately you want to be predictive, autonomous, adaptive. And that's exactly what Stephanie talked about. How do we get to predictive, autonomous, and adaptive? And it's really, and I'll give you an example, a real example. So Ming and I, we were at, this a large, I won't mention the name of the company as we're working with them, but they are a Fortune 300 company, discrete manufacturing. They're headquartered in Paris. We met with the Chief Digital Officer, interesting enough, by the way, Chief Supply Chain Officer, you would think is who is our main persona. But the Chief Digital Officer, Chief Data Officer is coming up much more often. It's very interesting. I'd say probably 80% of the conversations have been with them. And what I thought was interesting, as he brought in all of his direct reports, and they immediately went to predictive, autonomous, adaptive, because they wanted to build out a scenario simulation as a digital twin sitting above their two demand planning, supply planning systems. So they use O&P and they use Anaplan. Because of all the disruption that we're having in the markets today, especially with our president making a lot of tariff changes all the time, is creating complete havoc in being able to really optimize where do I bring in that product so it's most cost efficient. And it's difficult if you have one planning system that doesn't really have all the data. You have another planning system that doesn't have all the data. So he said, could we create a digital twin and you help us do the scenario planning sitting above it. You optimize the outcome and then you push it back into whether it would be Anaplan or O&P. And there's a slide I'm going to show you very, very soon here. Is I brought everyone back to, are you really ready to do that? Are you really AI ready? We hear so much about AI ready. Well, it really is real. Are you really AI ready to do that? And the entire staff at 12 people, they sat back and they said, you know what, we're not AI ready. It was a 3-year plan. He changed it that day. He says, I'm going to focus completely on making sure that we're AI ready. Working with us, and you'll see why it's important because, and I mentioned One Data Platform, is that, let's say it takes a year to do that through the organization because they're doing so many acquisitions and whatnot. You don't have to switch to another product by the time you want to use Gen AI and all the ML and the vector search and the LLM because it's already embedded in the product. And that's what their staff and he really liked, is that it enabled him to say, okay, we're going to bring the product on. We're going to focus on making sure we have AI-ready data. And then we're going to move to actually using AI for prescriptive insights to be able to do that, really autonomous planning, if you think about it, in a simulated scenario basis. So keep that in mind as we go through this. And the supply chain technology I'm going to talk about is Supply Chain Orchestrator. So it's a supply chain, it's a decision intelligence platform. As I mentioned, it's out of the box and integration, ingestion, interoperability, advanced analytics, including predictive analytics and Gen AI. And again, it's all in one product. And when Luciano was talking about InterSystems, so look, like you mentioned, approaching 50 years, we're privately held, we're about 1.2 billion in revenue, but we're constantly putting that revenue back into making sure that we're always ahead of the curve from a technology perspective. And I'm going to show you also why that's important, is that, as I mentioned, we enable AI to be AI ready. We accelerate decision intelligence. Who knows what decision intelligence means for each one of you, but chances are it's going to be accelerating time to value in some way. It's going to be accelerating your ROI-based decisions that you're doing. We bring the processing to the data. And that's what Luciano showed you in the very beginning. That is something that is very difficult to do. I'm not really quite sure how many people can really do this well, bringing the processing to the data, and I will explain why that's so important on a slide coming up. And then we complement existing systems and applications. And that's why Ming and I really enjoy coming out and talking to like you today, and the reason in talking to the CDO and his staff is because we don't go in there saying, well, you know what, we need to really replace SAP or we need to replace Kinaxis or whatever. We're not there to do that. We're going to complement those existing systems and we're going to be able to optimize what they can't optimize and then push it back up into the appropriate system. So it's almost a lot of fun, being in supply chain logistics as long as we've been in it, to be able to do that. And then it's good to know that we have a composable solution. It's not a commercial off-the-shelf solution. It's important to know that because every single one of you, I could throw out a metric, and in fact, we were just talking about this earlier, so on time in full. On time and full, whether you're in healthcare or whether you're in aerospace or whether you're in logistics. It's all about making sure that whatever is, so the right product at the right time is getting to where it needs to be. But ultimately, you're going to compose it differently. So every single one of you are going to compose that solution a little bit differently. And that's what we do. So once we compose it, we then implement it. I showed this slide. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but again, my goal really is by the time I'm done with my presentation here in like another 15 minutes, is to really so that you know us a little bit better than what you knew before you came in today. And I like to show this slide because, we're not all things to all people. We concentrate and optimize fulfillment. We concentrate in demand sensing and forecasting, and we concentrate in what we call intelligent orchestration. If you look at the typical areas under each one, I mentioned on time and full, inventory optimization, contingency labor management. You then go to how to improve forecast accuracy, on-shelf availability. And then intelligent orchestration is we hear so much about control tower, but what we have done, and I have a use case, because I'm going to give that at the end, is who are we doing this with now, to give you examples of how we're using it. But it's an actionable control tower. So it's not only bringing the data together, but then how do we make it actionable? How do we make it more prescriptive to use? Warranty reserve, optimization, and digital twin and scenario planning. All of these different scenarios are being used on the product that we have. This, again, is just a short, not going to put a lot of time into it, but we talked, and Stephanie brought up data fabric. I do have one slide in data fabric that goes into a little bit more detail, but it is the underpinning of our architecture and what we do with our product. We are considered we have developed what's called a smart data fabric. I'll get into it again in just a minute, but we're the pioneers of that. We've been doing it for just over 2 decades. So think about when Databricks announced that they're going to be partnering with Kinaxis. We need to figure out, and I've been talking to Kinaxis, we're going to use the data fabric architecture. Well, we've been doing it for 20 years. So trust me, we know it and use it very well in all of these different scenarios. It could be complete supply chain visibility. I'm going to show you a partner. I have a video with the partner. It is the partner saying how we accelerated time to value from a visibility perspective, optimized fulfillment, even data integration accelerator. CGI uses us for that. So they're going to market with optimized contingency planning with our product. And then the sustainability, and then another aspect of data integration accelerator between SAP and Kinaxis. Typically, we've seen in the market, as soon as you want to use Kinaxis Maestro, you want to connect into SAP, it's 18 months to implement. They decided to work with us through our technology to get it down to 3 months. That's a significant time to value improvement, not only in revenue, but in operational cost. So what is the product? It is 4 different technologies coming together. So the left side is, if you look at this, it's really like what I've been saying, how do we unify data? How do we harmonize? How do we normalize all that different disparate data across all the different systems, the applications? It could be unstructured data. Think about if you know that a shipment's going to be late coming into the port here in Singapore, sometimes somebody's emailing, they know before there is even a digital notification that that ship is going to be late. It gets even worse because you know how many containers on our ship, and you know that every single SKU is just multiplied for complete chaos. So what we can do is we can bring in emails in that are unstructured along with the structured. We can normalize and unify that data. The lower left is what we talk about. We then harmonize the data on demand. That's key because we're bringing the processing to the data, so we're not, as you scale, we're not creating yet another data lake, another data warehouse. We're not, it's so efficient because we're not scaling to the point of being able to just be a tremendous volume of data because we're bringing the processing to the data, so we're not building a database, if you will. Intelligent processes is how do we bring all that data together So how do we connect applications, connect processes, and then actionable insights is using advanced analytics, like I mentioned, is using all the aspects of generative AI for Copilot, LLM, and vector search. We then wrap around that all the different aspects of supply chain, so everything is supply chain specific. Supply chain KPI framework, supply chain APIs, canonical data model, and analytics are all supply chain specific. That's what we meant by out of the box. So, and this again, and by the way, if anybody wants the presentation, we can send the presentation to you. So there's nothing confidential in here at all. Like on this slide here, there's so much to go into. I think key factors are using this smart data fabric. We have built this architecture around the ability to have security, have governance, have advanced analytics, to the ability to do what I've said so far in a very efficient way that's extraordinarily accurate in real time, and then putting it back into your application. I think that's key to understand, is we're going back into your application. We're not that endpoint execution system. Just some selected customers, just to give you a feel, because probably when you came in here, you know, typically I might take, like, you know, show your hands of, who knows, of InterSystems. Typically not a lot of hands go up, but we're behind helping to optimize in some way all of these companies using us for supply chain, and some are very large companies that I mentioned. We really focus, I have to admit, even though I'm in charge of market strategy for the company, we would put more money into technology to make sure that we're constantly ahead of our competition in what we do. So let me go into just a few case studies to whet your appetite. You know, we can talk about these later at any point in time. One example, and I strategically, because I knew who was coming here, so I pulled use cases that hopefully will be of interest to you that we can talk about later. But Paltech is, and Luciano mentioned it before, they're the largest wholesaler and over-the-counter drug manufacturer, or distributor in Japan. What makes this, and what I really enjoy about this, Ming and I have been to Paltech several times. We met with their CEO. They have 50,000 items. Think about this, 50,000 items multiplied by 1,000 manufacturers, multiplied by 400 retailers, multiplied by 50,000 stores. I gave a presentation. I multiplied it all out. It was a very large number. So that large number, if you think about it, just think about just one SKU that isn't ready. You're not going to be able to get it to that 50,000, one of those retailers. We have enabled them to be 99.999%. The CEO has gone to market that we've been able to have near perfect on time in full throughout this entire connected relationship. And I just love talking about this because it is something that's very hard to achieve. The second one, CFAO. CFAO moved their headquarters to Paris. We've met with them several times. They've been using us for probably about 15 years now. What I really like about this, and it's good for who you're here now, is that we integrated 140 subsidiaries out of 40 countries. And by being able to bring this integration together onto a data platform, we could help them what we call blind spots in the business. What is it that you can't see that we can show you what you can't see ahead of time? We've been able to provide faster, more accurate responses from 2 hours to 5 minutes. And I think a real key to me is because of the 120 subsidiaries in 40 countries is that new partner integration, because they're a 3PL, a third-party logistics company, they were able to bring down this integration from 6 months to 2 days. And again, there's a theme here I'm giving you, is accelerating time to value. This next one is MSC. So Mediterranean Shipping Company is obviously the largest container shipping company in the world. They've been a very long customer of ours. They use us to be able to track every single shipment that they have, whether it's on sea, on land, and they allow their end customers to be able to visualize that with our technology. The biggest piece that I really like about this is that it is workflow, processing, validation. Think about all the different touch points of information that's coming into the port and beyond the port. It just takes one element that's not accurate that will hold up that shipment. We're doing all that validation within the system that I showed you. This one, I just have two more. This one I like, again, that this is a partner. So this partner, they're a systems integrator, and they have built their visibility solution to compete with other visibility solutions out there. And they came to us and they said, it would take us, if we let's say that they know that there's going to be a disruption on the container ship coming in. And we know of all the SKUs and all the endpoints that is going to have an impact. What we have done is, because of the technology that I showed you, is we provide the prescriptive insights to them on what to do next to avoid the ultimate disruption to the end customer. They wanted to go, and I have a video I'm going to talk to from their perspective. They wanted to spend, they figured it'd take about 18 months to do this and about 10 million to do it. I said, why don't you come with us and we'll do it in 3 months? And that's what we did. We did it in 3 months. So what I've talked about here, I'm going to run the video, and they're going to talk about, it's only a 1-minute video, talk about how they felt that what we have provided them is the value in a very, very short period of time. And by the way, once this starts, if you want to talk to Jonathan, please let me know and I can arrange that.
At UST, we are constantly focused on the major supply chain issues and the things that could cause potential disruptions, such as a pandemic, the global food crisis, hyperinflation, or the shift of companies to reshore production. UST Omni is an app that brings trading partners together and gives them better visibility. It uses technology that listens and senses activity throughout your supply chain and notifies you if there are problems. Our customers have been able to cut inventory by 10% and improve customer service by 15%. InterSystems really serves as the brain behind UST Omni. Nobody understands the power of predictive analytics better than InterSystems. InterSystems gets it. They understand the technology, they understand the science, and they understand us. Supply chains are fragile. UST and InterSystems are working to restore the stability of global supply chains.
And then finally, you have, so this company IOL, and this is relatively recent, and what we've done is that we help them optimize their TMS system. And again, application specific, we're not an application, we help them optimize their TMS. I don't know, is DB Schenker here now? I know there were supposed to be 2 representatives, so they're not here. All right. So DB Schenker is, and they're in your packet. So if you want to go to that, it talks about what we did to help optimize the TMS that DB Schenker thought was extremely, as you can see right here. So be able to delivery success rate from 80 to 96%. So think about the value that that has brought DB Schenker as being a very large 3PL. That is it. So I hope I gave you a nice perspective on what InterSystems can do in supply chain. Thank you.